happen. We have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrop.
And in many ways, we have a lot of terrible things to tell you, but we're going to start off with some good news because Botswana and Bhutan have decriminalized homosexuality in various ways, and San Marino has added us to their constitution.
Who could have imagined or predicted any of those things? We'll give you some details and show you some charming video from Bhutan. But we'll also show you a picture of what happened at Pride in Washington, D.C., where there was a panic that sent the crowds running and truncated the event.
Some of our diplomats in the State Department are defying the ban on rainbow flags on their flagpoles at their embassies.
And Baronelle Stutzman is trying to defy the law in Washington state and defend her refusal to sell flowers to a gay couple getting married. Well, she's lost in a lot of court venues, and she lost again.
Anti-LGBT murders in Detroit, in Georgia, and in North Carolina. A trans inmate has died in custody in New York City, and anti-lesbian violence in London. We're going to tell you all about it.
And that one got a lot of headlines.
Well, they put it out there.
Yeah. And the Vatican is trying to wipe out trans people while they are under assault worldwide.
The Tony Awards were LGBT and Q.
How about IATS and a few
think
others?
About that.
Okay. We're going to tell you about a restored film on David Hockney, the artist, an intimate portrait from 1974 that is opening.
It was very sexy, and I'm very excited about what happened. Who should we talk about first?
Well, I think you voted for Bhutan first.
Yeah, because
it was happy to
because it was so joyous. Bhutan is right up there by China, near Nepal and all. It's been, by the way, this country has never been occupied since 301 AD.
It's a kingdom, isn't it?
I'm not entirely sure about that, but they have a parliament.
Oh, okay.
And the parliament decriminalized homosexuality there, and there was general rejoicing, and we were so touched by the film of the people finding out that they'd won this legislative victory that we wanted to bring it to you.
Yes,
we have to celebrate. Come on, we have to be. Okay, kusasangpo, everyone. We just left the Parliament building. Actually, we're standing right outside, and I'm standing with my LGBTIQ friends. What happened today, guys? What happened? Yes. So homosexuality just got decriminalized in Bhutan. The clauses 213 and 214 have been removed. This is what was just discussed just a few minutes ago. And we're also happy. Some of us are crying. Pema, what did you say? After 27 years of your life, you finally feel like you have an identity?
Yes, I do feel validated. I mean, the fight that we have for past fight that we have done for like we have carried out for past 4-5 years has finally bears fruit. So it's like an overwhelming.
You can't believe it. I'm so amazed. Also, I'm so thankful, guys. We have to thank our members of parliament. Don't you want to thank our members of parliament? Everyone, what do you want to say? Kachlo. Sure. Thank you. Anything to the decision makers?
He will do it.
Yeah, come again.
Member Parliament, thank you.
Yeah, let me do it.
Dashi.
We would especially like to thank the finance minister for doing this for us, and also the members of the legislative committee for taking this initiative forward, and everyone who stood up for us today. Thank you very much.
Okay, everybody, garden chairs, Lavshkara. Garden chair, Parliament of Bhutan. Finally, in our lifetime, it has happened. All right, everyone, follow the rest. parliamentary proceedings, but the age of consent discussion continues. However, we're just so happy that progress has been made in Parliament and we have such forward-thinking politicians. So grateful. This would not have happened without them. So, namisame karinchela. You've really changed and affected lives positively today.
It is beautiful.
And I read the Wikipedia entry on Bhutan, and it says they pioneered the concept of gross national happiness. Come on over here and help us with our gross
maybe we're going over there. I'm always touched by seeing these films from around the world because we're very, U.S. centric, and we tend to think that everybody else is living in a cave.
Isn't the name of the show
somewhere.
Gay USA? But we do cover the world.
That's just a brand.
We do cover the world.
We do, and we're always moved by seeing the movement around the world. So
Yes.
Congratulations to activists in Bhutan. Clearly you've done a magnificent job of making your lives visible to Parliament and moving them, and we congratulate you and wish you the best.
And we're very excited about the African nation of Botswana. The High Court there struck down the 2 colonial-era laws effectively legalizing gay sex. The justice in the case, Michael Laburu, said that sexual orientation is not a fashion statement, despite that picture there.
I love that woman standing in the court. She's
wonderful.
standing in the courtroom
With the
with
rainbow.
the flag. I just think that's such a striking, beautiful picture.
That would get you let out in cuffs in the Supreme Court of the United States.
That's true.
And the judge said that the laws violated the right to privacy and the freedom from discrimination. He cited India's ruling legalizing gay sex, and the activists called the whole thing life-changing. And by the way, the president of Botswana, Mak Gwitsi, has expressed support for the community, and he's running for re-election.
The decision was 3-0 in the High Court, and they also pointed out that these laws are old British colonial laws and are unconstitutional under the current Botswana constitution. And the judge also said human dignity is harmed when minority groups are marginalized.
Yeah, and before we move on to our national news and things, I'd like to mention the international news about what came out of the Vatican this week.
Okay.
Absolute bile. They issued an educational report that's called Male...
Educational in quotes.
That's their name of it. Male and female, he created them. They attacked the fact that gender identities exist on a spectrum as a confused concept of freedom in the realm of feelings and wants or momentary desires provoked by emotional impulses. Did they study all this to come up with this crap? They say that gender theory, this is their phrase, gender theory, annihilates the concept of nature. What, are you running around the woods worshiping trees now? I mean, or this is the Western world following this. I mean, it's just awful. I mean, it's so hateful and unenlightened.
Terrible. And destructive.
Yes.
And dangerous.
And kicking people while they're down.
Definitely.
And we're going to talk about that, the violence that has been perpetrated this last week, just this last week. Right.
Yes, but we'll start with events at several pride parades around the country. First in Washington, D.C.
Oh.
Well, these are people running in the streets to get away from what they thought were gunshots. It turned out
some guy at the side of the parade got in a fight with somebody and pulled out a gun.
A BB gun.
Well,
it was a BB gun.
How do you know? And somebody must have shouted, "Gun, gun!" We don't know exactly what happened. And it was like people just fled, panicked. 7 people were injured in this, and they had to cancel the rest of the march.
Knocked over barricades to get out of there. Charles Blow, the black bisexual columnist for the New York Times, wrote a column about how he was in his hotel room nearby and 4 young women came and pounded on his door and he let them in. And what he centered his thoughts on were the fact that young people have a legitimate fear of mass shootings, and that we have done that by not doing something about them.
And we have a legitimate fear of neo-Nazis. In Detroit, they crashed the Pride March there, and the police are getting criticized for the way they handled this. They were shouting anti-gay slurs, not the police, I don't know, but the Nazis. And the police said that, well, it was our job to protect these neo-Nazis in this big crowd of gays, and they said they escorted them out of the festival.
Yeah, the criticism was that they'd been treating them too gently, but the Nazis were clearly, they didn't just bring swastika flags, they brought guns. They were wearing guns because Michigan is an open carry state.
Open carry is madness.
It is madness because, you know, when something happens, like the Dallas shooting a few years ago when people were shooting from all sides, and how could you tell who was a problem? So these people were there deliberately to provoke another Charlottesville in Detroit, and the police kept it calm and got them out of there. So I appreciate that.
But in Brooklyn, New York, our old friend Kate Barnhart was the Grand Marshal of the Pride Parade out there. She runs New Alternatives for Homeless LGBT Youth, where I'm on the board, and very proud to see that. And then there's what happened in New York City. The police commissioner, James O'Neill, said actions taken by the NYPD at Stonewall were wrong, plain and simple. Now, Lambda Legal pointed out that the history of police violence and criminalization of LGBTQ people sadly continues to this day. So, Reclaim Pride, what do they have to say about that?
We, by which I mean I, and others. Right. But we put out a statement saying that this was basically too little too late, and that to decide to make a statement like this in the middle of Pride Month when the pressure is on you is ridiculous. You know, why not decide in January that you're going to address grievances and apologize?
Because they never apologize for anything partly because of liability, although the statute of limitations is up on Stonewall.
I don't know, but they have so relentlessly terrorized, humiliated, abused LGBT people of color, trans women in particular, trans kids. They just have such a history and current practice of that.
Yes.
So our statement said, look, you want to apologize for Stonewall? Fine. We've all been asking that for a long time, but really that is totally inadequate. And not only do we want you to apologize for all these things, we want systemic change. We don't want you to just stand up and say, oh, that was terrible. We want you to do something about it.
Right.
So that was our reaction.
Are we happy that the governor of Wisconsin, Tony Evers, is flying?
Right. Before we leave New York, I want to point out that the Puerto Rican Day Parade might as well have been a LGBT Pride Parade.
Like the Tony Awards?
Well, we'll get to that. But the Grand Marshal was Ricky Martin. And some of the honored people in it were the trans actress MJ Rodriguez, who's in Pose, and Sylvia Rivera. They were all honored in the Puerto Rican Day Parade.
And don't forget Gigi Rodriguez.
Oh, golfer.
Yes.
Not gay that we know of.
Not that we know of.
Yeah.
So, in Wisconsin, for the first time, they did fly the rainbow flag over the Capitol. This was from the new Democratic governor, Tony Evers, and it's going to stay up there all through June. And they did the same thing in New York State for the first time. I don't know why it's only the first time in New York.
Really? The first time in New York?
That's what they said.
That's crazy.
That's what the state capitol I'm talking about.
You don't have to yell at me. I get it.
I'm not yelling, but I'm half deaf myself. All right. And I guess we should talk about flagpoles around the world with Trump.
Oh, yes, the Trump administration.
Because Obama authorized this, and they've been flying, a lot of them have been flying rainbow flags.
And Hillary Clinton had something to do with it as Secretary of State.
She did. So basically an order went out from Mike Pompeo, who is a virulent anti-gay bigot, saying...
He says Christ directs his work at the State Department.
Oh, very heavy into that.
Yes.
Seriously.
Yes.
They have all these prayer meetings about everything.
Yep.
And so he basically said, no rainbow flags on the official flagpole with the American flag. You want to put something inside, you can do it. You want to have a pride thing, but you can't put it on the flagpole. Vice President Pence said,
one flag must fly.
That's a great decision. It's a patriotic decision. Yeah. And so some of the embassies in Israel, Germany, Brazil, and Latvia, they were the ones who asked to be able to fly this time. They were denied, but the Seoul embassy put the rainbow banner on the side of the building, as did one in India and in New Delhi, and some of them are just going ahead and doing it anyway.
Yes, they are, and
but not in Germany, where we got a gay ambassador who wanted to do it, but can't do it.
He's a right-wing
He's a
Trump
Vichy
supporter.
Richard Grinnell is a Vichy
But the thing
gay.
is that Grinnell announced, and then Trump supposedly reinforced in his Pride Month message, which clearly
his Pride Month tweet.
He didn't write. That we have a program to improve life for LGBT people around the world.
Around the whole world.
But
we're standing up to Saudi Arabia.
No,
we're standing up to Iran.
It's all about Iran. So the hypocrisy of saying that and then issuing this edict, when the whole point of putting a rainbow flag on an embassy flagpole is to signal to the world that you support our human rights and want to assert them around the world, it's mind-boggling.
Well, 50 members of Congress have already signed a letter protesting to Pompeo, but I don't know where that's going to go. Just fly the flag.
Well, meanwhile, all the Democratic presidential candidates went to Pride events in Iowa.
They did.
Yeah.
And Joe Biden switched on the Hyde Amendment in 2 seconds because circumstances have changed.
Well, he was publicly humiliated. I've been talking to a lot of reporters in the last few days who want to talk about Reclaim Pride and Pride marches and ACT UP and stuff. And they've been asking me about techniques, and particularly media techniques. And I said, well, we would learn about an issue. We'd try to talk to the people involved. But if we couldn't get anywhere, the next level was public humiliation. And Joe Biden was the subject of public humiliation.
His campaign aide saying, we're not turning this campaign into an apology tour.
Why
Get
not?
over it. He's got an awful lot to answer for.
Yeah, that's just
any port in a storm, as I've often said, I will vote for Beavis and Butthead if necessary.
But in terms of dissension within the ranks of the Trump administration, the other thing was that the Defense Department military health system put out a statement that said the military health system covers, or the Defense Department put out the statement, military health system covers treatment and drugs for everyone.
Yes.
After Trump said his thing about we can't have trans members in the armed forces because they take tons of drugs.
Yeah, and their operations cost $250,000, another lie. Well, I know things seem bleak, but especially in the courts, but progressive judges, going back to the Carter era, are just not retiring. They are holding on for dear life until 2021, when they hope there will be a new president so a Democrat can replace them.
Including Justice Ginsburg.
By the way, Mick Mulvaney fired all 25 members of the Consumer Watchdog Advisory Board this week.
Oh, my God.
And then HHS is now approving Title IX funding for groups that do not provide contraception. That's the whole point of Title X. And they won't provide. They're giving them to clinics that won't even provide condoms. And this is why Title X was written in the first place.
Folks, as people like to say, we don't have a lot of time to rescue this country from these monsters and maniacs.
Mike Pompeo says, if you're worried about climate change, move. That's what he said this week. Move.
Where?
If you're coastal, people just have to move. Climate changes. Yeah, it changes. Move.
Okay.
And of course, they ended they're banning fetal tissue research for abortions, HIV, Alzheimer's, and cancer. This is what you voted for, America.
I think we have to move on to a lot of stories.
And they're recalculating the poverty line to throw people off Medicaid and food stamps. Did you read that?
No, they're reducing it to like $1,000.
Whatever, so that they can throw a lot, and legal aid, so they can get, this is what they're doing right now.
Man, these conservatives, they must sit around in conferences all day, every day, dreaming up this agenda.
Which we need to do too when we get power back, if we can. All right.
Well, meanwhile, we have some terrible incidents to mourn. Let's start in Detroit. 3 people murdered, 2 gay men, 1 trans woman.
There are their pictures.
And a couple of others injured.
Young people.
Yeah.
By, the victims were, prosecutors said the victims were targeted for their sexuality.
Yeah.
In where are we going to? In Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Well, this was a case of an out deputy sheriff and a gay activist, Dante Austin, taking his own life. He was the first out officer in that.
Those are all pictures of him at various stages of his life.
He was
beloved.
Yeah, he was planning to run for sheriff in 4 years.
Very successful.
Was said to have been in high spirits. He was the grand marshal as part of a couple in last year's Pride, and he was in line for promotion. He was an Army vet who worked in civil enforcement unit. And he served as an LGBTQ liaison. He was said to have despised bigotry, despised inequality, and fought for change from within. And we've lost him.
Very tragic. And in Lumberton, North Carolina, trans woman Chanel Skurlock was shot dead. She was 23 years old.
Found in a field, misgendered and dead named at first by the media. Her mother said she was a gay man. She's the 9th trans woman killed this year, all African American. The detectives say they have great leads in the case.
You know, in the midst of these discussions I've been having, a lot of it is talk about corporations sponsoring floats in the pride parades or putting us in their commercials or something, and then claiming they're doing great things for us.
Because they're for you.
Well,
they're for themselves.
They're giving like 10% of the profits of a T-shirt sale or something to us. And I look at this list of these black trans women murdered all over the country relentlessly. They need jobs in these companies.
And
you want to do
education.
something? Education, jobs,
healthcare,
housing. And some of them are successful in their communities and get killed anyway. So if you want to do something for us, please, the least of us. You've heard that phrase?
Yes.
The least of us. And by that, I mean people in the direst straits.
Yes. And then there's Decatur, Georgia. A 28-year-old named Ronald Peters was shot and killed on his way to work by a gunman who used anti-gay slurs. And apparently, there were 2 people. One of them was the shooter, but apparently he'd been approached the week before, his partner said, with someone being anti-gay. So we don't know the entire story here. Guy just on his way to work and shot dead.
They tried to steal his backpack, so it may have been just originally a theft, but I think he talked back and they, boom, shot him dead.
And then in New York, I mean, this is not an anti-gay case that we know of, but it's a guy and a gay couple named Winston McKay. He was out walking his dog in the evening. He goes out after celebrating his 18th anniversary with his husband, and he gets shot by a stray bullet in the leg and dies. And the gay angle here is that when the lover finally heard about it and came downstairs, his husband had been taken off in an ambulance, and they go, Winston McKay's dead. You know that, don't you? And this is the way the cop talked to him. And he wasn't allowed to see the body for a long time, but horrible, horrible story.
And then a case that is still a mystery of sorts in New York City, Laylene Extravaganza, or Laylene Polanka Extravaganza, found dead in her cell at Rikers Island, the jail. She had been picked up on a sort of minor scuffle arrest and maybe drugs involved, and she couldn't make the $500 bail.
$500 bail, stuck in a cell, and dies.
For 2 months.
Dies.
2 months in a cell. So there's concern about why she died. We don't know. We don't know if it has anything to do with the NYPD or the corrections officers. She was in trans housing.
Now everybody says they're concerned. There was a big rally. Hundreds of people came down to Foley Square down there. Yeah. That's Hope Giselle leading that rally down there in New York.
So tragic case, and we're still waiting for details on that. We'll follow that as we go along.
What do you think about you got more?
I have milder stories of violence.
Okay. Milder violence.
Okay, well, there's a big, well, yes, I classify these as attacks and therefore in the same category, but not quite as bad. For instance, the conversion therapy group in New Jersey that has continued relentlessly to practice conversion therapy on kids, even though they were ordered by a court not to do so.
Yeah.
So they have now been put out of business by the court and told to, they're originally fined $3.5 million, but they only had to pay the $500,000 pending future good works. Well, now that they've been found to violate the order by just changing their name, they have to pay the other $3 million. This is Jonah.
Erie, Pennsylvania City Council passed a ban on conversion therapy, and the guy there says, I'm going to take this to court.
Yeah, well, they were
I want to do it.
They were convicted of consumer fraud in New Jersey, which is a theory that started in California, I think. And it's a way to go after people because they're doing something that is not what they claim they are doing.
Including for adults. Most of
Yes.
these bans on conversion therapy are just for minors. They figure you adults can handle it yourself.
Maybe, maybe not. In San Jose, California, the LGBT youth space was vandalized, doors and windows smashed. The people running it said, this is horrible, but it's not going to stop us. We're going to continue to operate and continue to provide services.
Right.
And in Garrettson Beach, Brooklyn, which is a very conservative part of Brooklyn, there's a dust-up over Drag Queen Story Hour. The local residents complained and tried to get it canceled. Activists,
Picketed, didn't they?
Activists went out there and defended it. So no actual violence, but certainly a dispute.
All right, can I give them some better news?
Certainly.
Well, the big case in Washington State.
Oh,
this,
yeah.
This was a case of a florist who didn't want to provide flowers for a wedding. And so
For a two-male wedding.
Right. And so it went up to this was back in 2013.
She said it was against her religious ideals.
So the Washington State High Court had decided this case, said that
Yes.
she violated the anti-discrimination law.
Yes.
Supreme Court said, well, in light of the Masterpiece Cake Shop thing, we want you to hear it again. So they kind of reviewed the record. Was there any anti-religious bias and anything anybody said to hurt these people's feelings? No. So they lost their case again at the High Court of Washington State, but they say they're going to go back to the Supreme Court. And by the way, the Supreme Court still has yet to take the Oregon gay wedding cake case.
Well, what these cases show is the importance of state laws or local laws against discrimination, sexual orientation or gender identity discrimination, because what the Washington courts have been deciding, and the Colorado court in the Masterpiece Cake Shop case, is that the state law against discrimination is not invalidated by someone's rights to religious freedom. And states that don't have non-discrimination laws are much more likely to find in favor of the discriminators who assert a religious privilege.
Right.
So it's really important to keep passing those state laws and a federal law.
So we told you about YouTube's crackdown on hate. I hope they don't go after us for saying bad things about the Vatican, but we think we're being fair. But they did revoke ads from Steve Crowder's site. He gets about 4 million hits. He makes a lot. He makes like 1.29 million annually off ads on YouTube. Ted Cruz defended him. This guy spews a lot of anti-gay stuff. He sells T-shirts that say socialism is for fags, things like that. So they're cracking down. He's a big Trump fan.
Good news from Georgia, where the legislature quietly passed a law that gives more parental rights to same-sex couples, the non-bio parent.
They had to slip it through and not talk about gays.
Yeah, they just talked about straight couples, unmarried ones, I guess. But the hidden agenda at the time was that this will help same-sex couples, and so now that it's been passed, everybody feels good about it.
And Stacey Abrams, one of the Grand Marshals of Atlanta Pride.
Yes, terrific. Still hoping she might end up on a ticket somewhere.
In worse news, the Trevor Project did a survey that says 2/3 of LGBTQ people said someone tried to convince them to change their sexual orientation or gender identity. More than 76% said that the recent political climate has affected affected their mental health. The other 24% don't read the papers.
Good news from the American Medical Association convention in Chicago, where they adopted a new policy urging their members, doctors, to take action on behalf of trans people, not just to accept or understand, but to reach out proactively to help, whether it's lobbying a legislature or standing up for trans people in other settings. So that's a good thing.
Last week I said that there are 4 states that have yet to elect out LGBT legislators, and that included Delaware. But a viewer noted that Karen Peterson came out after being elected to her last term in 2012.
Where?
This is in Delaware.
Sorry.
And she did come out, and she just wasn't elected from the get-go is out. Kevin Spacey got some good news this week, I guess you could say that. Apparently the prosecution, you know how they stood up in court and said we don't have that cell phone thing. Well, they did have it.
Yeah.
Of the guy who accused him of groping him, the young man who accused him of groping him, and the young man apparently altered the phone to delete a lot of messages to his girlfriend on the thing. And it turns out that the mother who was sort of bringing this case, and I'm not a Kevin Spacey fan,
I know,
but the mother of the victim in this supposed victim in this case, alleged victim, is very close friends with somebody in the prosecutor's office. So it's getting a little dicey. Her name is Heather Unruh, and so. Spacey says, look, this was a mutual flirtation in a bar. The other guy says he groped me, and we'll see what happens.
The New York State Legislature, coming to the end of its annual term, passed a couple of things. Gestational surrogacy passed in the Senate. This is, Andy Cohen was in Albany lobbying for this because this is how he got his son. By having to hire someone in California to bear his child. And New York is one of only 3 states that does not allow such arrangements because they see it as exploitative of women. And that argument is still going on now in the Assembly, so it may or may not pass the Assembly.
Yes, even the National Organization for Women opposes the bill, actually. Speaking of sexual harassment, David Mamet has a new comedy on Harvey Weinstein, a comedy on his sexual harassment called Bitter Wheat that is starring John Malkovich in London, and it is getting panned across the board, as it should. He's become an awful person, that David Mamet. Maybe he always was.
Black queer Muslim Blair Imani, she's an activist who's quite well known, and she's one of the people who's speaking for Heritage of Pride at their rally here just before the Pride Parade at the end of the month. And she has spoken out about how offended she is that they're using her image on banners, on light poles and stuff, with corporate logos over it. And she said, I didn't sign up for that. How dare you?
Yes, you did if you work with HOP.
Exactly.
Yes, you did.
Gay Liberation Front members were offended by that,
we
too.
We only ban images of children without
They also
consent.
Evidently censored a T-shirt she was wearing. Oh, this was Procter & Gamble was on her... her picture.
Speaking of speakers at Pride, we told you about the Sheboygan Lutheran valedictorian who couldn't give a speech, Nat Worth.
Yeah.
He was honored at Milwaukee's Pride Fest with their 2019 Valor Award, and they let him speak. He said his parents still don't accept him for who he is, and he was surrounded in school by students and teachers who perpetrated a culture of homophobia and intolerance. So the head of the Victory Fund heard about this, and he's flying the kid to World Pride in New York.
Not Anise Parker, head of the...
No, it's a board member.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I apologize.
Right.
Not a niece. And then Nevada, the legislator voted to let voters decide whether to repeal the amendment to the Constitution that bans same-sex marriage. It takes 2 votes by the legislature, 2 votes by the people to change the Constitution. They did it against us years ago, and now they're trying to undo it. But if this Supreme Court allows this again, there are a lot of states with these laws on the books against us.
Yes. What you need to know is that while the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage, which wiped out the effect of those laws around the country, States didn't repeal those laws, as happened with sodomy laws too.
Right. But not only it's not. See, it'd be easier for legislatures at this point to say, okay, all right, if they don't want to, we'll let you do it. But now they've got constitutional amendments that are harder to change if they've got those on the books.
Thanks to George Bush. So,
among others, and Karl Rove.
Yeah, exactly. 2004.
Okay.
So check and see whether your state has a law or a constitutional amendment that forbids same-sex marriage, because you're going to want to get rid of that, even though you think it's not in effect, because it could go back into effect if the Supreme Court gives that decision back to the states.
We're sorry to upset you.
We're sorry. Let's just make that a blanket statement.
Okay.
We're sorry.
All right.
International news?
Well, Alan Turing finally got an obituary in the New York Times.
It's true.
100 years later.
Well, they have a system now which they're calling Overlooked, and they're doing obituaries for people that didn't write. It was meant to put in more women's obituaries.
And he was not famous when he died.
Right.
Because the work he did was secret, breaking the Nazi code.
Yeah.
By the way, I had a wonderful picture of him when he was 27 in there with a gay friend of his and two young Jewish boys, refugees, that they took care of in 1939.
Wow.
So the guy had a lot of heart.
Okay. And let's see, should we go to...
Oh, you want to talk about that horrible story?
In London. Well, I want to talk about it because it got such worldwide attention.
Yes. Well, a lesbian couple on a bus, all right?
In London, top of a double-decker.
Top of the deck. Late at night, they're coming home, and these kids come up, and they see them holding hands, and they're like, come on. They start using sexual terms.
Yes.
They're teenagers. They're all 13 to 18. 5 have been arrested for this. Look at what they did. These women put this out there. They said, we want you to see what happens when there's this kind of violence. So they put this picture out there, and it has gotten, it's been on all the news.
Well, it's an attractive, white, younger, lesbian couple in London.
We have talked about a lot of other people on this show, that's for sure.
I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about the mainstream news media picked this up very quickly and said, look what, and they had a good picture that personified. Believe me, I am horrified at what happened to these women, and I wouldn't think of not covering it, but I'm interested in what the mainstream news media picks up.
One of them said, violence has become a common thing that sometimes is necessary. It's necessary to see a woman bleeding after being pummeled to feel some kind of impact. She's been unable to return to work, but the police are rounding up suspects. This was on the late bus to Camden Town. I've been on it often.
Okay.
All right. In Jerusalem, Pride there had 10,000. High security due to the stabbing murder of a 16-year-old Shira Bank a couple of years ago by an ultra-Orthodox extremist. That was 4 years ago. They had their first out minister in the cabinet marching. He got booed because he's from Likud, and he's, it's not a progressive. He was booed. And same-sex weddings are... 52
ultra-Orthodox people protesting the Pride Parade in Jerusalem were arrested. One of them found to be carrying a knife. They had 2,500 cops protecting the 10,000 who were marching.
Yeah. By the way, the Israeli government still prohibits same-sex weddings in the country, but if you get married outside the country, they'll be recognized to an extent.
So 23 couples held a marriage event to protest that and to demonstrate in favor of legalizing same-sex marriage. In Samoa, the Elton John biography film Rocket Man has been banned in its entirety.
They're a Christian country, they say.
Yeah. The LGBT population held a protest.
But we're not banned in Disneyland. They had their first official LGBT Pride Parade, but it was Disneyland Paris. They have these gay days in America, but they don't have an official. And this was everybody.
Any minute now.
Mickey and Minnie, and they were all
Disney
there.
has always been very pro-LGBT and to its employees, and the minute they realize how they can profit off this, it will be a Disney event.
Yeah.
In Poland, at Warsaw Pride, 50,000 people showed up.
The largest in Eastern Europe.
Huge.
Diplomats from the United States participated. The mayor joined in the Equality Parade.
They usually do.
There were, There are 20 pride marches in Poland. In Hong Kong, a gay civil servant won his final appeal requiring the government to grant him and his husband spousal benefits and joint tax assessment. Days after striking down. This is just like days after they struck down 7 criminal offenses as discriminatory versus gay men.
In Sofia, Bulgaria, 6,000 people showed up at their Pride event. And in Tbilisi, Georgia, they're going to hold their first Pride parade.
Good luck.
The whole event, June 18th to 22nd. They're also going to have a production of the Kafka story Metamorphosis with a gay cast. They're going to have a conference, and they're going to have a political march, not a corporate march. There have been many threats from the right wing, the church, and the government. So keep your eye on Tbilisi, Georgia, June 18th to 22nd. And similarly, St. Lucia in the Caribbean is going to hold its first Pride events in August. So we will keep an eye on that.
We buried the big news from San Marino. Now, I know it's a country of only 33,500 people, but they banned discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation in their constitution.
In a referendum where we got 71.46% of the vote.
Now, San Marino's been independent for
they legalized civil unions last year.
It's the 11th country to protect sexual orientation in the Constitution, although I read about some of these and I wonder, United Kingdom, Sweden, Portugal, Malta, Bolivia, Ecuador, New Zealand, Mexico, South Africa, and Fiji. Things aren't great for gay people in some of these places.
Yeah, but we don't even have that in our Constitution.
Denmark elected a left-leaning government led by this woman, Frederiksen, who will be the youngest and second woman prime minister. And Gentleman Jack also had a very good time in Denmark this week. It's Denmark.
Okay, whatever. In India, the re-election of the conservative government there means that they will reintroduce a proposed anti-trans law.
They're going to reinstate the sodomy laws too. Germany's health minister is moving to protect gay youth, LGBT youth from conversion therapy. Ian McKellen has given a lot of money in Manchester for LGBT people over 50 who were isolated. We urge you, if you're feeling isolated, join us. Join us in Reclaim Pride. Join us in organizations. I know when you get terribly old or infirm, you don't have the energy to get out and understand. But we got plenty of older people working with us, and we don't.
And younger people.
And how about
Reclaim Pride is a great coalition that came together quite spontaneously to produce this community event because we don't like the corporate takeover of the Pride Parade. It's disempowering to the community. We want to empower communities.
So on June 30th, and I know many of you are coming to New York, you can come to the Village, go to Stonewall Place before 9:30. We're going to kick off there, and we're going to march up 6th Avenue to Central Park. And you can join us at any point along the march, including a big group is going to join at Bryant Park at 42nd Street. So, please, and you get to meet us personally.
Yeah, if you can find us in what we expect to be a very large crowd, but we are telling people if you don't want to get up early enough to start from Sheridan Square, or that's too long a march for you, come to Bryant Park at 11 a.m. There'll be lots of stuff going on there.
And there's a bus for the disabled.
Yes, and we will pick people up. Yeah, if you need transportation, go to reclaimpridenyc.org, our website, and you will see an access or accessibility button you can click on to let us know what your needs are exactly.
And in the Philippines, this is quite moving. In Marikina City, the Pride March was greeted by Christians holding banners apologizing for the hurt caused by their co-religionists. These were from an evangelical Pentecostal church.
That's amazing.
Saying, we're holding up big banners, we're sorry. And the minister said, I've read the Bible, it doesn't really condemn this. What are you talking about? And we're sorry.
I heard the same thing from an Episcopal bishop at a church in Brooklyn last Sunday where I was...
I thought you were going to say 30 years ago.
No, there was... they had a big Stonewall event at St. Anne's in the Holy Trinity in Brooklyn.
Did you accept his or her apology?
I didn't feel a need to comment on that, but he got up and gave a very heartfelt apology. And of course, all the church officials there are completely LGBT and positive, and it was quite a wonderful event.
I remember when Bishop Moore first spoke to the Integrity, the group, the LGBT group, and it was all everybody very thrilled. The bishop is speaking to us and everything. Well, of course, he was having an affair with the guy himself all that time. Despite having 2 wives and 9 children. All right, AIDS
Quite a
news.
household.
AIDS
Yes.
news. The U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, which neither of us had ever heard of, they finalized. What they did was they gave an A rating to PrEP. And this means that it has to be covered by the ACA and
Obamacare.
Obamacare under the anything that gets an A or a B has to be provided with preventive services, and so it's a breakthrough. And of course they're trying. Of course the Trump people are in court trying to dismantle the ACA. No, not dismantle it. End it. End it.
We can segue into entertainment news by talking about the first episode of season 2 of Pose last night, which was very AIDS focused. Billy Porter's character is dragged to an ACT UP meeting when he gets angry by Sandra Bernhardt, who's played a doctor. One of the...
Did it seem real to you? Because in Pose, the key is realness.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, they went to the ACT UP meeting, and then they went to the Stop the Church action and got involved in that.
Which you know something about.
Having been one of the 6 defendants and convicted on 4 counts. I'm a convicted criminal.
And this was about busting up a church service to say to the cardinal, well wait a minute. To say
wasn't meant to bust up the church service.
It was,
Interrupt, yes.
Yeah, people were lying in the aisles. Some people were screaming, from the pews.
The screaming was not pre-planned.
All right, but there it was. But because the Catholic Church was opposing condom availability, condom education,
and not just
preventive
opposing
education.
it, they were sitting on the advisory board for the city public school system.
Me.
There you go.
And when they finally stopped going to meetings, we got condom availability in the schools.
And our outrage
in 1991
in ACT UP was that the church had been invited into the public school system by the city of New York. And we were furious at this because all their policies were murderous policies. And so we decided we had to confront this. And we spent a good 6 months arguing among ourselves about whether to go into St. Patrick's Cathedral. Very divided opinions within ACT UP.
Yeah, I was in a minority in criticizing it because I believe in the First Amendment. You don't interrupt a First Amendment activity like that. You protest from the outside. But as Larry Kramer said about this action, it made everybody scared of us. They never knew what we were going to do next.
And it raised the issues worldwide because it was so outrageous. And we did pre-plan going into the cathedral to do very dignified actions. I was part of a group that was lying silently in the center aisle. A small group was going to just stand up and read something. It was all that kind of thing. But then Michael Petrellis decided that wasn't radical enough. He got up on a pew and started screaming. And in the Pose episode, there is a guy standing on a pew screaming, "You're killing us." So I thought it was quite realistic. It wasn't, you couldn't recreate the monumentality of it, and they didn't show the 5,000 people outside in the streets.
I was there.
But I thought they did an excellent job of really leading that line through it and understanding it. And they started it at Hart Island, which is an old TB ward in New York, where there are nameless people buried.
That's what they do, bury them, yes. Although I think Corey wants to turn that into a park.
He does.
Corey Johnson is our out gay Speaker of the City Council.
And out HIV positive.
Running for mayor now,
et
cetera.
So congratulations to Pose for taking this on. Congratulations for doing a real job with the issues. You couldn't recreate it in full, but I thought they did a valid
Yes, they couldn't use St. Patrick's Cathedral. They had to use the Riverside Church. All right.
I guess.
Okay. Tony Awards?
Okay, and then I have a few other notes, but we'll get to those afterwards.
By the way, again, they gave out, you didn't see it on the telecast, but they gave special awards to Terrence McNally. And by the way, his PBS special is on Friday at 9 o'clock Eastern on American Masters. And Judith Light gave a wonderful speech. And they gave, and of course, before we talk about the winners, let's talk about the pre thing.
Well,
Billy Porter on the
carpet,
on the catwalk, whatever it is, not the catwalk, but the red carpet. I'm sorry.
It
should be with what he's wearing.
The entrance to the Tony Awards, with Tony Awards written right there, was turned into a rainbow flag of flowers. So that was in all the red carpet pictures, and that was their acknowledgement of Pride Month.
And Billy was one of the presenters, and they had a scene from the prom pose. The prom, and they recreated the lesbian kiss, in case you missed it, on Thanksgiving Day from the Macy's Day Parade.
And it was quite passionate. It was
but the prom didn't win any Tonys, and that upset me, but what can you do? And then our old friend Tara Alvin McCraney, who wrote Choir Boy, which was nominated, explained what that show was about. Out gay writer and Academy Award winner for his movie Moonlight.
He was quite moving in discussing the themes of Choir Boy, and it made me, and the performance, it was the one performance that made me sorry I had missed that play.
Because the musical numbers and a non-musical in that thing were very good. Taylor Mack, who wrote Gary, or the sequel to Titus Andronicus, gets up in full drag. And Taylor talked about his play and said it's about the destruction of society, and whether anything would be done about it. And he sort of said, no.
Don't lose that picture yet. Put that back up
Taylor
if you
back
can.
up.
Taylor Mack will be at the Queer Liberation March run by Reclaim Pride. And what Taylor will be doing, and I don't say he because Taylor uses the pronoun Judy.
Yeah, good luck with that, I'm just going to say.
Taylor will be at the entrance to Central Park at 59th and 6th, greeting marchers as they come into the park, along with Machine Dazzle, who made that costume and is notorious for all of these over-the-top costumes. So you can expect something really outrageous from them just at the entrance to the park.
And you can expect something wonderful if you go to see Hadestown, which was the best musical. And the winner for Best Supporting Actor in a Musical was our old friend Andre DeShields, who has been on this show, who really lights up that show, gave a wonderful speech there. He's 73 years old, has been nominated 3 times, and he finally won. Congratulations, Andre. And then, I would say, somewhat to our surprise,
I think everyone's surprised.
The best revival was given to The Boys in the Band. I wouldn't say it was my favorite revival of the year. On the other hand, Mark Crowley, he's there over there, not in the blue, but the next guy, the little old man.
Ryan Murphy in the blue.
Who produced it and is making a movie out of this production of The Boys in the Band. But Mark Crowley dedicated the award to the original cast, and he said every one of them had their agents tell them, you will never work again if you take this role. This is more than 50 years ago, before Stonewall. And it was just very, very, very moving.
And a lot of those original cast members are dead of AIDS.
Have died of AIDS, yes.
So he described them as brave, and he was exactly right.
Yes.
But one of the most popular wins of the evening was Allie Stroker for Oklahoma, supporting her featured actress.
She plays Addo Annie. I'm just a girl who can't say no.
She is an out bisexual actress, and she's
the first one to win in a wheelchair. I didn't, she's in a wheelchair in the show. I didn't know if she was disabled, but she is disabled.
Yes, has a disability.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. And I wondered whether anyone has ever won a major award in a wheelchair before.
I don't think in the Tonys. I mean, Lionel.
Well, definitely not in the Tonys.
Lionel Barrymore was in a wheelchair in the movies for a long time.
And Teddy Pendergrass in singing. So maybe there have been others, but I tried to Google it, but that was just too esoteric for Google.
And the Oklahoma producer, Eva Price, because Oklahoma won for Best Revival.
And she, let me see if I can find this. Hold on one second. I need my glasses.
I don't have the inside information on Eva.
Well, she said, producer of Oklahoma, Best Musical Revival. Thank you, Jen, for teaching me about love.
I don't want to fight about this too much, but Bryan Cranston won for Network for Best Actor in a Play, and he gets up and says archly, "Finally, a straight old white guy gets a break." And I thought that was kind of funny.
I didn't.
You didn't like that?
I thought it was not.
I
at all
loved what he
amusing.
said, but he dedicated the award to the media, to us. And he said, the media isn't the enemy of the people, demagoguery is the enemy of the people. And he's known to be a conservative,
Exactly.
But what he said was a direct hit on Trump.
But his conservatism is one reason I did not find his statement about finally a straight white guy amusing.
I agree, but he's gotten better. And then Ben Platt, who won the Tony for Dear Evan Hansen a couple of seasons ago, presented an award after 11 p.m. and he gets up and he says, "If you're still watching this, you're gay." I thought that was funny. But it was the lowest rated Tonys ever.
Really?
Because everybody's online doing things, they're not
Yes.
watching TV.
Right. All right. Well, if you want to get out of the house, you can go to the Film Forum next week and see the original Paris is Burning by Jenny Livingston. It is playing from June 14th to 27th for a couple of weeks, and Jenny will be there in person talking about the film on June 15th and 22nd.
And they're re-releasing the film about David Hockney called A Bigger Splash, which filmed him in the early 70s when he was already an established artist. And he's filming that, and he's making that famous painting that you see part of it there that was sold for $90 million last year, the record at the time for a living artist. And it is a fascinating film. It's not narrative. It's not a documentary, although it's real people. I really liked it. And then there's some fantasies. That's Peter Schlesinger, who ends up being in that painting. And it's very sexy. This kid does a love scene with another guy that just pops up on the screen and will blow you away.
A reminder that next week on the 18th, PBS is airing the Lavender Scare about the government purges of gay people from government jobs in the 50s and 60s. Tremendous film. And I watched Stonewall Uprising again on American Experience. That's available online from PBS.
And I should say that A Bigger Splash about Hockney is opening at the Metrograph June 21st and then nationwide. I saw a play called Handbag by Moira Buffini at 5090's 59th, Maggie Thatcher and Queen Elizabeth, two of each in the play.
Why?
Because younger and older.
Okay.
And it's an import from Britain. It's been around for a long time. It really deals with the destruction of government and the shift to the right in the 80s that we're really paying the price for now. So I do recommend that at 5090's 59th.
And I just want to thank the producers of Gentleman Jack, which just wrapped up its first season. There will be a second season. It ended very romantically with a sort of covert wedding between Gentleman Jack and her beloved. Yes. But they did a great job. And,
great show.
Yeah, and I really appreciated that.
You can get it on demand if you missed it.
Thank you for that. And we'll be back with more from the heat of Pride Month next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.